DW Africa Link.
Silence falls across cathedrals and communities. Bells toll, candles flicker, and hearts across Africa beat with quiet sorrow. The world has lost a spiritual leader, and Africa, a friend. Pope Francis, a voice for the voiceless and a bridge between faith and justice, has gained his holy wings. His message resonated deeply across the continent in his visits, advocacy for the poor, and unwavering call for peace and dignity. In this episode, we remember a man whose papacy touched lives far beyond Rome. We hear from those who felt his presence, even thousands of miles away, and reflect on his legacy in African hearts and history. That's what's coming up. Stay tuned. My name is Josephine Mahachi. Welcome to Africa Link, the podcast that connects you to the stories that matter from Africa.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
As the world mourns, African leaders and citizens reflect on the legacy of a pontiff who touched hearts across continents. Pope Francis' body now lies in state at St. Peter's Basilica, where public mourning will last 3 days before his funeral on Saturday. Known for his humility and advocacy for the poor, the Argentine pontiff led the church for over a decade despite growing health struggles. His 5 visits to Africa, a continent he held dear, left a lasting impact on the hearts of African Catholics. The Democratic Republic of Congo hailed him as a, in quotes, voice of the voiceless. The African Union praised his bold engagement and commitment to peace. His coffin has been lying in state in St. Peter's Basilica for the public to have a chance of saying final farewell, and the doors will remain open until end of Friday. Now, to reflect on his impact, I'm joined by Father Mushunje, a priest overseeing 4 parishes, Doren, Langen, Sulzberg, and Thal in Vorarlberg, Austria. Father Mushunje lives in Langen, near Bregenz, the birthplace of Abbot Francis Fana, founder of the Missionaries of Mariannhill in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Father Mushunje brings a unique perspective, serving in Europe while rooted in a mission with deep African ties, a connection that echoes the global reach and legacy of Pope Francis. Now, Father Mushunje, as a priest, how would you describe Pope Francis and his papacy?
For me, Pope Francis was an example of what it means to be humble, to be human. He was a man who was down to earth, and his first words just after his introduction as the Pope on the 13th of March struck me very much and makes it clear that he was a humble person when he said, Fratelli, sorelle, buonasera. That means brothers and sisters, good evening. You would not expect that from a Pope. He was somebody who was down to earth. He was addressing these people as in a way that does not show hierarchy. Pope Francis was a very humble man. Instead of staying in a papal palace, he chose to stay with his fellow cardinals in a very simple guest house, Santa Marta. That's where he stayed the whole of his time. He would only go to the papal palace for business, to meet guests and dignitaries.
Right. And what kind of legacy does Pope Francis leave behind?
One of the main things that he has really left, especially for people like bishops and priests, is there's a very common statement that he says bishops should have the smell of the sheep. Bishops, priests should identify with the people whom they shepherd. They should be servants, Lord. So I would say I mean, it's a lot that he has left for us, for our generation, especially when it comes to peace, dialogue, reconciliation with nature.
During his papacy, Pope Francis made 5 trips to Africa where he preached peace, unity, and tolerance, which you just touched on. Now, how does this message of hope resonate with peace-loving people and biblical teachings?
Yeah, that is actually his teaching on peace and reconciliation. One can say that is actually that was the central teaching of Jesus Christ himself. That is the central biblical teaching of peace and reconciliation. Yeah, when we read from Jesus himself to the Sermon on the Mount, when he was talking, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. This is the central message. And his name is not by coincidence, yeah, that he chose the name Francis. Francis von Assisi is known as a peacemaker. And there is a common prayer from Francis of Assisi when he's saying, Lord, make me an instrument of peace. And where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, let me sow pardon. Where there is sadness, joy. So it's not by coincidence that he chose this name and propagating further what Francis of Assisi has always been praying for peace. But when you look through the Bible, the teachings of Jesus Christ himself, in many times it was more to do with peace.
Right. We also know that he even preached in the world's hotspots. We're talking of countries like South Sudan and the DRC. In fact, at some stage, Father Mushunje, the Pope kissed the feet of South Sudanese leaders, urging them to embrace peace. Now, this particular act, as a priest yourself, how significant is this?
That is a very powerful symbol. So Pope is not condemning these warring functions. He's not going to those countries to condemn them, but maybe it is a way of giving them an example of how they should behave, how they should act. He is showing them how they should treat their subjects, their people. That is the highest form of love. This is servant leadership that Jesus was doing. So what is leadership according to the Pope? Leadership, it is service. Leadership is not subjugation. If these leaders are able to lead their people as the example of Jesus by being a servant leader, then there would be peace. So that act is a very powerful act that shows that the leadership is not in subjugation, it's not in showing power, but it is in service, showing service and love to your subjects.
Right. Now let's go to the Catholic Church itself. Pope Francis was also advocating for reforms within the church. And a couple of times, or many times rather, as we see in reports and as us media follow this, he was often criticized. In your opinion, is the Catholic Church in dire need of reforms?
Certainly. For me, a society or an organization that does not reform itself dies because society changes. There's always new things coming. That does not mean that the church should always copy what the world is doing. In fact, the church should be the conscience of the world, but there should be elements of reformation that should take in order to cope with the present situation. But unfortunately, there are people who prefer the status quo, but the status quo does not always support the values that the church would also want to give out. But the challenge that also the church has is that the church is unity, the church is one. But when you look at the diversity, when you look at Africa, when you look at Asia, when you look at South America, when you look at Europe, these are completely different cultures with different expectations, different levels of values, of mentalities, and yet there must be one teaching. And that is the challenge that the Pope will have to face. Any change is not going to be acceptable by all, because people are coming from different backgrounds, different mentalities, different values in the value systems. But certainly, reform is necessary for every society, every organization. Otherwise, an organization or society dies out.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking about, of course, the next Pope, I grew up in Catholic, and then it was Pope John Paul II. I remember very well. But we just all, yes, so we just all knew that, oh yeah, there's Pope John Paul II is in Rome and whatever. But I would say Pope Francis is one of the closest now I've followed as an older person, as a mature person. And you mentioned this even as we started discussing, that he chose to live in a 2-room hostel instead of a 12-room house that had been chosen for him. He even chose to share his meals with people around him. And oh my, I wish I had really met him in person, Father. And I really feel that it's going to be a challenge. This is my opinion, but I also want to hear from you. It's going to be a challenge to find replacement that fits well in his shoes and Jesus' character. Because I see already on social media, everybody's advocating for a black pope, for this pope, either Asia. Is it supposed to be about color, about nationality, or about character?
For me, it has nothing to do where it comes from. We are a universal church represented in almost in all the continents, and we don't need a black pope, we don't need an Italian pope, we don't need a European pope, we don't need an Asian pope. We simply need a man who fears God, who is going to lead the church forward and uphold the values of our church. Wherever one comes from is not the most important thing, but what he represents is what is important, not where it comes from.
Right. And let's talk about the process for people who don't know how it is done. How is the next Pope going to be selected?
There is what is called a conclave.
Mm-hmm.
That is, all the cardinals who are not yet 80 will be invited in Rome. They will be in a chapel called Sistine Chapel. And when they get in that chapel, then they do their 40. I would say without outside influence. And people actually wait outside. Actually, by the election of Pope Francis, as I was there 3 times. And the election is not conclusive. They burn something, a substance, then we only see black smoke. When you see black smoke outside, coming out from a chimney from the Sistine Chapel, then you know that the election is not conclusive.
What could have happened there when it says inconclusive? Is it like they're disagreeing, or there's spoiled ballot papers, or do you know?
It's what really happened, the nitty-gritty, we don't know, but
nobody knows. Okay.
It's all for me, it's all about the majority, or they have a certain amount, like they say exactly what I wouldn't know. But I think it's 2/3 majority. When they don't have that, it means they have to go for another round. Okay. So when the first round is finished and there's no clear winner, or let's say 2/3 majority, then the black smoke comes out to signify that the election is not conclusive. Until it's time that they get 2/3 majority, then you see white smoke. Immediately you see the white smoke, then it means the new pope comes.
So do the cardinals also, like, the candidates campaign like what we see politicians also campaign? Or how
they don't, I mean, okay, they are humans.
Yeah.
They might do some bit of campaigning, but normally in the church there is nothing like campaign. Even for a bishop, you cannot campaign.
So how do you know that this person is the good one? I mean,
they know each other. This is it's called a college of cardinals. They know each other, so they know exactly. Yeah, because it's not a huge, big group. They know each other. How many they are, I'm not so sure, but they know each other really.
Right.
Yeah, they know each other.
Right. Now, on a lighter note, Father Mushunje, the Pope was also an avid sports fan and was particularly fond of soccer, which he saw a vehicle to spread peace and offer education. Pope Francis also even recalled playing soccer as a young boy using a ball made from rags. You know, Redure Kumusharia, we called it chikweshe, right? So, yes. So the sports world, in what we are seeing, has also lost a fan. What have you been seeing in social medias or even amongst you priests? What are other priests saying about this? Even I know you also follow football, and just your comment on that. Yes.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I'm a soccer fan. I'm a Manchester United fan.
Oh my word!
Unfortunately, things are not going in the right direction. We all grew up playing soccer. Soccer was a people's sport. Every section, everywhere in the corner, children plays football. That was the sports for people, for ordinary people. But unfortunately, sports has been commercialized.
Right.
There's a lot of money flowing in football that it has become so expensive. Even tickets, many people cannot afford. Now it has been so much commercialized. I think sports in that way, football, it's gone in the wrong direction.
Right.
But anyway, sports can also build bridges between societies, can build bridges between communities. When you look at sports, it's a team sport, especially international. You find in a team can have players from 10 different countries from all over the world. In one team, there are players from Asia, from South America, from Europe, from Africa, and they are a team. And that is building bridges between nations, between continents, between different people from different backgrounds. There's a lot of positive things happening also in football.
Right. We have seen also Argentinian national soccer captain Lionel Messi took to Instagram to say the Pope was different to those who came before him. It takes this statement, Father. It takes a very courageous person to say this. Someone of Lionel Messi's stature to say, you know what, this was a different Pope altogether. He also wrote, "Thank you for making the world a better place. We will miss you." Now, you as Father Mushunje, a priest in Austria, but also originally from Zimbabwe, you have a lot of followers who know you as a priest. What word of hope or message do you have for the congregants as we wrap up this discussion?
I would say, let us embrace what the Pope has taught us, especially a church of the poor, for the poor. We live in a world where there's so much poverty. We live in a world where so many people go through difficult moments, difficult times. But as long as we remember that this world, this earth is for all of us, that will be for us, say, very helpful. A world that caters for the poor and embrace unity, love, and prosperity for all.
Right. Thank you so much, Father Mushunje, a priest in Austria, originally from Zimbabwe, and a longtime admirer of Pope Francis, for joining us here on DW Africa Link podcast.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay. At the Africa Link podcast, we always look across the continent to see how the stories we are dealing with play out or at times even overlap. Catholic and non-Catholic leaders alike honored a spiritual leader who was a voice for the marginalized and the weak, for migrants and LGBTQ plus people, and for environmental protection. Representatives of other religions and other Christian denominations also praised him for seeking dialogue. In Africa, like we heard from our guest, Father Mushunje, he preached peace, tolerance, and unity. Africa is home to about 20% of the world's Catholics, with large populations in the DRC, Nigeria, Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya. Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu called Pope Francis, in quotes, a tireless champion of the poor and the world's most treasured voice on climate change. Whilst Kenya's President William Ruto described his passing as a big loss and praised his humility, justice, and compassion for the vulnerable. But how will ordinary people remember him? Let's hear from a diverse range of voices.
You see, when he spoke, you see him speak not as a leader of the Catholic Church, but as a leader of the Church of Christ on earth. Because his philosophy, his thoughts, his teachings were for humanity, not just for Catholics. So those are attributes that are rare to find.
He did a whole lot for the Catholic faith all over the world. So my heart is palpitating. I'm trying to hold back, but I wish by the grace of God, we'll have another Pope who will emulate his attributes, everything about him.
He's been a Pope who is very close to the poor and most importantly to nature. If you remember, he's the Pope who wrote the encyclical Laudato Si, that is the care of the earth. And has always emphasized that we should care for the environment, because if we don't care for the environment will also not care for us.
The 27th of November 2015 was the day I was the happiest, because I got an opportunity to enter the church where the Pope was, and he blessed my daughter. Among the many kids that had been lined up for his blessing, my kid was among the few that got the papal blessing. And today, I am so sad. My daughter and I prayed for the Pope.
As Christians, as Catholics, we were prepared for any eventuality. Remember, he has been ill for some time, and the best that we can do is to pray for his soul to rest in eternity, because according to our faith, we are very much aware that he has gone to rest with God the Father.
I'm just saddened and thinking of our friends and family who are Catholic at this time, and sending them love and care and prayers for all who are impacted and affected by his loss. It's a really sad day for, I think, the Catholic and Christian community.
It's up to that group that is going to select the next Pope to take into consideration whether or not they want somebody with the same principles to follow him, or it's going to be up to whoever they select the next Pope. So hopefully they'll make a good choice, because our world needs a little more openness and a little more acceptance, and trying to get everybody as a family.
I think he was wonderful. His simplicity, his kindness, his care of people. I love the fact that he lived in the hospital and didn't want to sleep in all the smart places, that they gave him, and that he was a very simple man. Ate simply, cared, went around the world talking about everything.
I feel really sad about the news, because the Pope is a very kind person who always taught us the benevolence, universal love to the others. He's really a great leader.
He supported everyone at all levels and stood up for peace at any moment of his time. And he was a great supporter of people who experience war, particularly, and people who experience injustice and injustices of all kinds.
A reminder, Pope Francis' funeral takes place this Saturday, with global leaders including US President Donald Trump expected to attend. That's it for this edition of Africa Link. Remember, you are not just a listener, but a vital part of our community, and your engagement can shape the direction of our discussions. We highly value your insights and encourage you to share your thoughts with us. You can find all of the Africa Link podcast episodes on Spotify or Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts from. This episode was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabi. My name is Josephine Mahachi. Thanks for listening. Until the next one, it's bye for now.